just fuck it, fuck it, fuck it, fuck it, fuck it. That was like the thought process.
Laura Jane Grace. The lead singer of the huge US punk band Against Me didn't always have that name though. In 2012, she came out as a transgender woman and said goodbye to her birth name of Tom Gable. But over the years, Laura Jane has been named a lot of things. A felon, a rock star, a parent, a sellout. But the one thing she really is, the one thing you can't avoid when you sit down talking to her, is that Laura Jane Grace is extremely bloody honest.
Gender dysphoria, like, kind of simply is a misalignment between like what is in your head and your physical body. You know, like the way I picture myself and I close my eyes and I think about the way I look versus what happens when I look in a mirror. And like when you look in the mirror and the shock of reality hits you, like that is the feeling that, like dysphoria is the feeling that's then created, you know? But when you're young, you don't have words for those things. And I probably didn't even hear the term transgender until I was like 19, 20 years old. But rock and roll itself was what really I saw hope in and took refuge in. And, you know, that was like, you know, from people like David Bowie. I mean, I remember watching Labyrinth and you know, despite the obvious crotch bulge, being like, I can't tell if that's a boy or a girl, you know, and I fucking loved that.
So, one of the things I read was that you saw something and when you watched Madonna on TV. Tell me if I'm getting that story wrong.
Sure, I think that like there's a moment in every kid's life where they like self-identify for the very first time, where they look at an adult and they think that will be me when I grow up, or that's what I want to be like when I grow up. And seeing Madonna on TV, I remember that very distinctly. And you know, that was like the immediate moment of misalignment too, of being like, that's awesome, that's exactly how I want to be, that's what I want to do, and then also realizing like, oh, but I can't, and it's not possible. So it was like, you know, without words, the feeling was present there. No one had to like teach it to me or anything. You know, I started getting beat up like in the 7th, 8th grade pretty heavily because I grew my hair long, so I didn't really have any desire to go to school. And then I started getting arrested and, you know, I got beat up by the cops pretty badly when I was like 15 years old and charged with 2 felonies and then convicted as an adult and then had like another felony charge. So I was already like a 3-time convicted felon by the time I was like 15 years old. So I tried running away from home twice and both times I got picked up by the cops. And after the second time, my mother was like, if you'll just stop running away from home, you know, you don't have to go to school anymore. You can drop out of school. And I was like, all right, cool. And I immediately started working and was playing in punk bands at the time. Like I started playing my first punk bands when I was like 13 years old, something like that. Like I felt like I had the realization of like, oh, this is the rest of my life now. I didn't wait until I was 18 to have that realization, and I didn't have the option of like pushing that realization off until I was like well in my 20s after college. It was like, oh, okay, I gotta figure this out right now at 16 years old.
Stop, take some time to think, figure out what's important to you. Stop, take some time to think, figure out what's important to you. Stop, take some time to think, figure out what's important to you. You gotta make a serious decision. Stop, take some time to think, figure out what's important to you. Stop.
Starting out at 20 years old and just like going for it, like touring like 8-9 months out of the year, like it was really easy to become absorbed in that and to forget about any other personal problems or to not deal with that and to push that away. And as the band grew, that kind of like fed into it too, of like, okay, well, as it's getting bigger, it's, you know, you got to make it bigger in order to keep pushing this away because these feelings are getting bigger also. So it's just like continuing to escalate everywhere.
How did you suppress that throughout all the years preceding that?
A lot of alcohol, a lot of cocaine, and rock and roll. But at the other end of it, you know, having been spit out of like, okay, well, you know, like we signed the major label deal and it didn't really work out, and like we went through like years of a lawsuit and really like kind of feeling like I do not know what is true anymore in the world. Like I did know this one thing was true. I knew the way I felt inside, and having that became this like source of like, well, I can keep going because of that, because no one knows this about me, so fuck you know. Like I mean, I remember distinctly in the studio singing the lines, if I could have chosen, I would have been born born a woman, like, and stop.
How did nobody pick that up? I mean, seriously.
There's like zero metaphor in that. It's just like the most straightforward line ever, you know, and just being like, anyone think that's weird? Should I change it? Everyone cool with it? Anyone want to talk about it? And everyone just being like, no, it's cool, go for it, you know, like. But getting to this realization of just like, I have to accept these things and own up to it, and it's just like, you know, like, just fuck it. That was like the thought process.
That moment when you decide to tell people, who was first?
I told my wife.
Do you remember her face?
You're telling something to somebody expecting them to understand it while you don't understand it. It's not like just because I was accepting myself and coming out with something that I all of a sudden was given this full knowledge of it, you know, of like what all this means. So it was really like starting over with this person, trying to convince them and show them that you aren't out of your mind.
I read that you said that one of the people that took it best was actually your daughter, Evelyn. She was 4 at the time. Why do you think it's so much easier for a kid to wrap their head around it than an adult?
I think what's important to kids is that they know that you love them and that you're going to be there.
Can I ask, what does Evelyn call you?
She calls me dad, but she uses she and her pronouns. But that's like one of those things that like most of the time if you try to explain to people, they're like, oh, I don't fucking get it.
Yeah.
It's like, who fucking cares if you don't fucking get it, you know? So it's different.
What kind of reaction were you expecting from your dad? You said he's a warm man that grew cold through military service. Mm-hmm. What were you expecting his response to be?
I guess I didn't expect understanding.
So you haven't spoken to him at all since you sent him that email?
No. Having had the experience with other family members of coming out and like them trying to embrace you, but it just kind of always being a fucking disaster where like, we're trying, we're gonna hang out, and each of us are gonna walk away from this feeling like shit. You know, like I kind of almost at this point really respect my dad for just kind of disappearing and being like, you know what, let's just not talk to each other.
It's a bit fucked though, isn't it? Come on.
It is, but also like I feel like, you know, you can only take so much of that on yourself too, you know, and my dad is a grandfather to my daughter and doesn't have a relationship with her. That's on them, and that's not on me.
I think the stats are something like 41% of transgender people have attempted suicide.
Yeah, somewhere around there.
How did you find your way through that?
I didn't. I've attempted suicide. I'm part of that statistic very much. I had a suicidal nervous breakdown about 3-4 years ago. About a year and a half after coming out, like it all just kind of caught up with me. And at the time too, I was also having some health issues in reaction to the hormones that I was on. I was waking up with like just drenched in sweat with hot flashes, and my arms would be like locked to my chest. I couldn't unlock them. And like had to come off hormones cold turkey, which just really fucks your system up after you've been on them for a while, and literally makes it so like your brain cannot be happy. Like the dopamine receptors are not working. I was like shattered, you know, as a person, and had to like kind of rebuild from there.
This is a weird question to ask in the context of an interview, but do you ever get tired of being part of everyone else's learning curve when it comes to trans issues? That you are constantly explaining the experience of people?
I don't know. I mean, like, not all interviews are created equal.
Okay.
You're really good. But, like, you know, sometimes it's just like, Jesus fucking Christ, I know there's no such thing as a stupid question, but goddamn, there are some
they're
stupid
definitely
fucking
stupid questions.
you
I've
know?
asked some.
I don't, no, but, like, to go back to that, like, I don't, you know, like, I don't get tired of it in a way where, like, it's really real.
If she wants to dance and drink all night, well, there's no one that can stop her.
Talking about trans issues, trying to educate people about trans issues, like, translates to a real world thing that does actually save lives and helps make other people's lives easier, including my own. That's what it's about, is like humanizing things.
Laura Jane Grace, you're an absolute pleasure to talk to.
The pleasure's mine.